Okay, so in this stage, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be having a look at toning in some of the half tones on the face. So I've already made a start, actually. I just kind of gone in very lightly with a 2B pencil, just kind of gently hatching those tones in. And you want to be very careful about where you place the tones in these parts. You don't want them to be so dark that they're going to blend in with the shadows. And you need to pay attention to like all the planes of the face as well. So I'm going to start by just kind of shading in the side of the nose here. And I'm just putting in very fine hatching strokes, just like that. Really trying not to go too dark. And now I'm also just trying to refine some of those different shapes in the nose. But I'm really just using the weight of the pencil in this part. I'm really not applying much pressure at all. And at the same time, I'm still strengthening the shadows along the border here. So I'm making sure that most of the contrast in the image is located in this region. And make sure that you're keeping your pencils really sharp for this part. So I'm just kind of toning in the eyeball now, which is basically a ball. So you just want to shade it as if it's a sphere. And you can see that I'm just kind of placing these hatching strokes through the shadows as well. So yeah, just really light hatching strokes when you're coming into the half tones of the hair there. It's getting there, but there you go. That's pretty much the whole process of the drawing. I'm going to keep going with this and I will show you the finished result very soon. But at this point, it just gets a bit boring. It's all rendering, honestly. It's all just, you know, going back and forth, going into the halftones, going into the shadows, you know, establishing the aerial perspective. It's just a one long, massive game of a back and forth. So if you've got to this point, you'll basically know what you need to do from here on. But I'm gonna go ahead and finish this drawing so that you can see what the finished result looks like. Okay, so I just want to film this like final stage of the process here. So you can see that this drawing is basically nearing completion. All the tones are in there. But what I want to do is I just kind of want to go over some of the larger forms again. So once you've finished like drawing all the details and all of the halftones, basically what you want to do is you want to come back to the large forms. And so if you have a look in the reference, you'll notice that there's like a dark band that cuts through like this strand of hair. There's also like a dark band coming here. So I'm just kind of coming in just with hatching strokes, going over all of the, you know, not really paying any careful attention to the details. I'm just hatching over it. And I'm just darkening the bits that need to be darkened, especially in this region here, because that's the border between light and shadow. And I'm just kind of picking out any kind of cast shadows along the way. But generally, I'm just taking a really dark pencil, like a 9B, and I'm just hatching through everything. Because what you'll find is that as you progress through the drawing, once you get all the details in place, the tones tend to get mixed up with each other a fair bit. So you just want to come back and re-establish the actual turning of the larger form. Because if you focus too much on the details, and you definitely will, then you kind of lose sight of the larger forms, and then as a result, the image becomes flatter. So to really make that look a bit more three-dimensional, you want to make sure that you're taking a dark pencil and you're coming through and you're just rehatching some of that aerial perspective back into the drawing. And that's literally what you got to do. And remember, it's darker in this region and it gets lighter towards the edges. That's the effect that you're going for. So as I come down here, I'm just using very, very light strokes, almost invisible. And this is where it becomes just a bit of a game of a back and forth, because you're going to go back to the large shapes, and then you're going to go back to the smaller shapes, back to the large shapes, back to the smaller shapes, until you find just that right balance, like just that nice finish. So this is a part that you don't really want to be rushing through, because this is kind of, I find, what makes or breaks the drawing. So there's a cast shadow here that I just want to pick out, so I'm really darkening that. And I don't want to darken everything to the point where I lose all the detail. That's why I'm using hatching strokes. If I was shading like that, then all of that detail would be lost. So you don't want to come in and shade it. You just want to use very light hatching strokes and just build up that tone, just very gradually. And if you feel like any kind of detail is getting lost while you do this, just come back in and just redraw it in there. That's all you got to do. So it's just a very complicated game of a back and forth, that's all. It's like a tug of war. But yeah, as you can see, just sketching in that dark band of light is really making the drawing pop out just a little bit more, which is good. That's kind of the effect that I want. And I'm only doing this in the shadow shapes. I'm trying to avoid going into the halftones. If I do want to refine the halftones, I'll just use a harder pencil and just kind of, very lightly just do the exact same thing. And I think I'll need to fix some of the lighter tones anyway. So with the lighter tones of the hair, you can just take an eraser and you can just kind of pick out, just very carefully, any kind of highlights. I don't like to go too far with that because generally I like to keep things a little more blended in than that. But it's the exact same game, especially with the eraser. You can get your highlights in there and then you can draw or hatch over the highlights just to soften them a little bit. So at this point, it's really just refinement. There's nothing more to this stage, and you are free to push this as far as you want. I'll give you one more tip. You can take a hard pencil. This is good if you want to get back into those details again, if you just need to sharpen up some lines. Take a hard pencil like an HB or an F pencil. I'm using an F. Doesn't really matter. Just make sure that it's sharp. And then in the shadow shapes, you're just going to kind of just follow the contour of the shapes. And you can see how that kind of strengthens that line there, okay? And you can do that with any shape that you just want to strengthen the plane of. So if there's any soft fuzzy lines and you don't like that, you can just take a hard pencil and really kind of strengthen that in there, especially in like those really dark corners. If you take a hard pencil and draw that on top of a soft pencil, you'll get very dark niches, as you can see there. So that just makes it pop as well. So these are all good techniques to get your drawing looking three-dimensional. See how I'm just darkening that little niche in that zigzag there? I could probably spend all day doing this, but you want to be careful with this. You don't really want to do it everywhere in the drawing. I don't mind putting a few of these dark niches in the foreground since this is the darkest part of the drawing. But I wouldn't go too hectic with this technique down here because otherwise you're just going to make it really dark. If you're going to use a sharp, hard pencil down here, just light strokes only. You see I'm just kind of refining some of these plane changes. I'm not really trying to darken them. I'm just strengthening that outline a little bit so that the form is a bit more obvious. You can do that behind the band of the hairline around here. But this whole time, you'll notice that I'm still jumping all around the drawing. I'm not getting tunnel visioned into one particular spot. And that's really the trick to drawing like this. I find a lot of artists, they tend to like draw with grids and then they shade each part of the grid in like a printer, like they'll do the top, go that way, That's not really what you want to do with a drawing like this. To really bring it to a complete finish, you want to make sure that you're drawing jumping all around the drawing, right? So it's like, you can come behind the ear a little bit. Maybe you could strengthen the outline of the jaw with just a little bit of light shading. Just keep moving around. Don't ever get tunnel vision. That's probably the biggest tip that I have. But I'm just going to keep refining things in this stage. I mean, it's looking pretty good as it is, but I like to try and push the drawing as far as I can, so I'm going to keep at it. I might just darken that nostril just ever so slightly. Yeah, and that's what I'm gonna do, and then I'll take a photo of the finished drawing.